My name is Carl Quo, and this is Founder Quest, a podcast about the journeys of starting a game studio. Today we talk with Thea Chow of Redley Games, founded in 2024. Thea's career has spanned some big names in mobile games, Supercell, Kabam, and prior to that, Next Level Games. After her time at Supercell, she really wanted to dive into the founding journey and ended up solo founding Redley Games. We talk a lot about that solo journey and what it's meant for her, both good and bad. Let's jump in. And where I always start is really about where your journey started as a founder, which is there was this clear moment, at least for me, it was a very clear moment where I went from, I don't know, maybe I'll start a studio to, no, I am emotionally and mentally committed to making this happen. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but I am going to make it happen. And I'm curious to understand what led up to that moment for you and sort of what pushed you over the edge.
Mm. Yeah, so I think for me, it was a couple of years ago, and it was sort of this like convergence of like a couple of different things, of realizations and thoughts. So the first one is I think relevant for everyone, which is the gaming landscape and the market has been changing, as we all know. And I've been in mobile games for a while, so I saw how mobile games had grown up, become saturated. I also saw a lot of familiar genres being repeated and lots of new games are coming out, more and more games are coming out. So it felt like the barrier to entry to making games became lower and lower, and the tools seem to have matured to a point where even smaller teams can start to make pretty cool experiences. So that, and then AI, like AI was becoming unavoidable, even a couple of years ago, and I felt that for better or for worse, it was going to change how we make games. So I think that was one like very big and relevant topic that was happening in my environment. But then personally, which is the other piece, was I felt that I had reached this really interesting mid-career phase where I still have lots of years and energy and learning left in front of me. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at any of the stuff that I've done, but I've also been working in the industry for long enough, for like maybe 13 or 14 years when I decided to make the leap. So I feel like I also have perspective and I've learned a lot about some of the challenges of making games, how make games are, how what game development is actually like. And so I'm not wide-eyed and naive compared to
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I had tried to do this right out of school. So I reached that stage where I was asking myself, okay, well, what's next and where could I grow in the most meaningful way? And what better way than to just sort of jump in and embrace the shift in technology? I think for me, I've always valued autonomy and maybe taking ownership over my own direction. So even though I could have stayed at a job that was really good, that I was very fortunate to have, and it would be secure. um, I feel like if I don't continue to learn about what's going on in the industry, continue to learn and grow my own skills, that I would just stagnate. So between that personal desire to learn and figure out um, this new shift in the industry and the industry shifting itself, I basically decided that okay, I have to do this now, and I have to do it before things starts to get more and more widespread. Like I wanted to get ahead of that this time, and figure out like, hey, is it possible for me on my own to go out there with a very small team or even just by myself and build something really ambitious in this new era of making games? I know that sounds kind of like cheesy, but that's what got me excited, I guess. Like a new way of making games, a new like something different than what we've seen before. So yeah.
That's awesome. once you had sort of made that commitment to yourself, right? Like, this is going to happen. I'm going to do this. Usually, especially first time founders, then realize, oh, I have to go and learn and figure out all these things. Now that I've decided to start a business, oh, wait, I don't know XYZ. Like, how am I going to do all this stuff? What were the really big things that you were like, okay, I've committed to this path, but now I have to figure this out, right? Like, what were those really big things that you were immediately faced with that you had to go and figure out?
Oh, well, there's so much I can talk about, but I mean, there's stuff that's more directional, and there's logistics. So maybe I think if I had to boil down to one really really important thing is to really for me define why I'm doing it, and that starts with values and motivation. So and of course there's the logistic aspect of, okay, well, I need to figure out like how to actually start a business, like how to support myself and all that, but we can get to that in a bit. But I guess the direction part is because making games, we all know, is really hard. Starting a company is really hard. And I knew from hearing about it from other people that it will be a tough journey. And now that I've been through it, yes, it is a tough journey. Um, so I think it's really, I thought it was really important for me to at least like write down, like clearly think about and write down, why am I doing this, and what are the values that I want to stick to when I'm doing this, because when things get tough I can always go back to that. So I think the first thing was actually just like asking myself the questions of, okay, like is this actually going to be a game studio? Like how many people, how big, how big do I want to get to? What's the what am I trying to make? And is it going to be games or like something more around platform or tools? So all these questions I needed to really solidify, and have a strong reason for why I chose it. And it, depending on what the answers were, it would also kind of inform how I go about doing this, right? So I think I realized that first I love games as a format and as a creative space. So like I just said, like the idea that maybe one person or a couple of people can just create something meaningful now, like create a meaningful game, just still excites me and feels really magical. So that ruled out tools, like that ruled out kind of like exploring further down like purely AI tools or doing something platform based. And then the other thing that I cared a lot about was to build something relatable and fresh, that I would want to make something that is not too niche, that is appealing for a lot of people. So just, yeah, just asking myself these questions. And then finally, just wanting to, this is maybe even more important, is that the it's important to build a team. If I actually at the time when I knew I could actually build a team or like build a product around this idea that it's not going to be done in the same way that I have been used to in the past. Um, so from there, I guess I also then define the values, which has since then changed. Actually, the wording has changed, but I felt that that was a really important thing that that helped me stay clear-headed when challenges come up and figure out like what to do next. So that's, I guess that's more, maybe I don't know if that's too fluffy or too vague, but we can also talk about logistics as well if that's more interesting.
No, no, no. I mean, I think, it's really about what you found the most challenging, right? Like the logistical stuff is very, very well known, and there's a million intricacies. And I know that you found it in Europe, which is its own set of
Yeah.
intricacies compared to sort of the North American experience, right? Um, but it's about what you and your journey, what stood out for yourself and your on your journey, right? But what might be a different answer is when you look back on sort of your experience from that moment of you committing to the path to now. If you were talking to, a younger version of yourself, or, another founder who has made that mental commitment but is now but hasn't started to build their startup. They're just like, no, I'm definitely going to do this. What's the biggest learning that you would go and tell that person of like, hey, you're wild ride, you're about to start. Here's the thing I can give you. That was the biggest thing I wish I knew. So you don't have to go out and learn it the hard way.
Yeah. Can I say two things? So
Yeah, of course.
so I think because I feel really strongly about these. So the first one I would say is like I don't I think many people may want to do this and be in very different situations. So definitely, to each their own. But I would personally really recommend making sure you get yourself into a position where you're at least financially stable for some period of time. I think like I wouldn't like what I've learned is like it's good to be prepared. It's good to be able to support yourself so that you can really focus. Because once you start a company, there's a million things you need to do. You have to context switch all the time, and I think one of the last things you want to do is to have to worry about your survival. So I know that there are founders out there who have a lot of energy and they're okay going all in and just not like there. Some people can do that. I can't. I need personally I needed to have a strong foundation. I needed to have built up my career to a certain point and like establish some sort of baseline security for myself before I felt like I could really be able to fully reach my potential as a founder, I guess. So that would be the first thing. And then the second thing is um, tying back to what I talked about before, is I learned that I had to be a lot more flexible than I thought I needed to be because I already thought I was pretty adaptable. I'm a former producer, so we deal with change all the time, right? As part of our job, and also also if you were a leader as well, like you always deal with ambiguity. But something about being a founder and making a plan and then having to change it feels very personal because this is your life, this is your vision, this is your plan, and people will tell you, yeah, like things change all the time and you can hear it, but then when you actually go through that and you realize, oh, I thought I was going to do this thing, I thought I was going to make this game, I thought I was going to collaborate with these people, and that's different. Or you realize along the way that you have to make some changes or you have to really do a 180 on like on what you thought you were going to do, then that can, for me, I took it as a personal failure. Like in a job as a producer or as a leader at a workplace, it's different because you're working in a different context. But as a founder, when everything is so dear to you and you're the one that's made those initial decisions, um, either with your co-founders or by yourself, then any setback or changes can feel quite personal. So I've definitely learned a lot, like to roll with it, and I still recommend personally to have a plan and personally again to write down the values and the why, even if they change and they can change. But it's because I think it's really important to have a goal and a north star, and then invariably when things change, you can always adjust. But it's better to do that than to be directionless. But that's kind of my own approach. But I think the flexibility you must have as a founder will definitely get tested. Like that's something I would I guess I would advise anyone wanting to go on this journey to be open minded and ready for that.
Yes, that is absolutely key advice. And I think it's especially notable because I know that you're a solo founder, and that is a particular choice in the difficulty of the journey. That makes sense for a lot of people, but it definitely can make it harder because you don't have co-founders to sort of share that journey with. What made you go down that path, right? Like, what was it? Some people go down that path because they can't find co-founders, or they're not able to connect with anyone that shares their vision or shares their perspective, but they feel so drawn to the business anyway that they go ahead and do it. Others go into it knowing that they need to be a solo founder for a variety of reasons and just go down that path without looking for co-founders. What sort of was that journey for you?
Hmm. I think it was timing. I definitely didn't set out thinking I would be a solo founder, but I wanted to just leave and start. I guess I also, maybe because I had been in more of a producer product like leadership position most of my career, that I didn't have like a built-in group of people that I've worked with for years and years, that we've sort of been in the trenches. That those are the kind of stories I've heard about co-founders coming together. I had lots of people that were really talented, that were really great, that I knew, but I didn't really find anyone at the time when I wanted to start that just like were ready to make a leap like that, and I didn't want to wait. And so that was one. I guess that was the more practical reason. And then secondly, I also felt like it was an opportunity to use myself as a guinea pig with AI and with what I just talked a lot about, getting excited about. I thought, well, I'm someone that doesn't have a technical background, so maybe I can just start and see what happens. And hey, if it doesn't work out, then I can look for a co-founder. But like at least let's really use this as a challenge, an opportunity for growth, and see what happens, because it could really prove something out, like prove out a really cool thesis if I can build something by myself, even though I haven't been like a hands-on technical developer in my career. So I guess those were the two things that made it that solidified itself as pretty good reasons in my head to just go for it at the time.
It's always tough to ask these questions because you only have the lived-in experience that you have. But from that decision, what have you found to be easier than potentially expected, or easier than you had heard stories of as far as founding? And what have you found to be like, oh, I really find this to be hard and I wish I had a co-founder, or some, or like when I hear stories about co-founders, I feel like, oh man, that would be so nice, and I don't have that, right?
Yeah. Um Okay, I guess a lot of I have received a lot of advice too, that it's important to have co-founders. That was actually a really key theme for me when I first started. I think people were really worried about about solo founders.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think s- the things that surprised me was that I wasn't really as lonely, at least in the beginning, as people told me I would be, because there was so much learning, and there was so much joy in just not being constrained by anyone, right? Like as like not having to ask someone for permission, in some ways, not permission, but like you don't have to discuss, you can just do. And I really like that a lot. I feel like we were, or I was able to move faster because of that. Like even just getting the logistics set up, getting the business set up, going through the paperwork. I had some support locally as well on that, but I think AI, the tools help me a lot with managing a lot of the paperwork simultaneously, keeping me organized, so that that like workload that usually had to be split between co-founders was not as burdensome for me as maybe I thought it would be. Um, and yeah, and so overall, I think it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. But definitely, there are things that I miss, like I get FOMO about. Right, the I guess the first, like quite a few things. The first thing is sometimes as I've been learning and building, I started to wonder, am I like am I right? Or like, there's no one to really like. There's no real validation unless, of course, you start putting your product out there. But when you're just starting out and you're designing something, you're making decisions. It's all just in my head, right? And literally talking to myself. And I'm working remotely as well, so I think just having like a co-founder who shares the same feeling of like having skin in the game, and like cares as much as I do, um would have been really nice, like to be able to to share that this like just bounce ideas off of them. So I've heard that a lot, and I definitely felt it. And I think also maybe there's an aspect here about credibility. I think having co-founders just make probably make especially an early stage startup like look a lot more credible to investors and maybe even to the community, because it just feels safer, right? You have got multiple people covering different gaps, and maybe if it looks kind of risky to have just me or one person um quote unquote doing everything, even though in reality that's not entirely true. So I think there's a component around the optics that can impact how that can impact your ability to, I guess, raise support. um and I think finally maybe just the the network, like the problem solving that multiple people can bring when you're trying to hire people or trying to problem solve. Obviously, having people with different experience and backgrounds and context would be really helpful. But I feel like I've been able to supplement as much as possible. It's not perfect. I think having great co-founders would definitely be a lot better, but I make do.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's an interesting one of I think your background definitely helps, right? Like and I speak, from my own experience being a solo founder for my first startup, right? I think when you come into this stuff with sort of that product production ish background, right? One sort of to your perspective of just the logistics of setting up a company, like doing paperwork and setting up all the forms and being organized around that stuff is kind of in our wheelhouse anyway. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't feel as overwhelming. Whereas I think a lot of times when you hear those stories, it's engineers or designers or artists who are like, I don't want to deal with any of this
Right.
crap. And you're like, I do this all day. Like, let's
Yeah.
go. Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that piece of your sort of talking to yourself and am I right? Am I making the right decisions? Because it all comes down to me. And even once you've sort of built up that initial team where you're hopeful and you can get some of that collaboration, at the end of the day, you sort of also recognize that, like, no matter what you say, you're the boss. And so if you say go left, they're just going to go left. And so then you're like, what? Is that the right call? Like, did I make the right call? Like, hey guys, did I make the right call? And they're like, sure, boss, I think you did. Right. Like, and you're just like, oh God, no. I think that's so much of the like mental and emotional struggle with being a solo founder is not having that. And obviously you support with, you know, getting lots of mentors or advisors or just friends, other founders and all that kind of stuff. But, to your point, like none of them have skin in the game. And so you do sort of just question that a lot, I think. Let's talk a little bit about fundraising. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how I know you're still relatively early in the journey, so maybe talk a little bit about how you've approached fundraising, with whatever detail you're comfortable sharing, just so we get a sort of sense of like, are you going more venture, more strategic, more publisher, bootstrap,
Mm.
blah, 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 right? Like
Yeah.
just kind of what vector have you been going down?
Yeah. So yeah, actually I like this topic a lot because I've learned so much about it that I didn't even know when I started. Um, I guess the long story short is I started off thinking I would bootstrap or solo it, right? And where I've ended up is going strategic. And there was like a pretty strong reasoning behind that decision. But I guess my approach was from the beginning always about being a bit scrappy, because like what I set out to do wasn't really to build this big giant really cool company, that's going to make the next big thing. Obviously I think we're going to make the next big thing, we all have to say that, and I really believe in it, but like I didn't set out to create a 20 people company, 30 people, or even like 50 people company. So the what I was looking at was more like, can I raise a bit of money? Can I just raise just enough to be able to have enough resources to prove out what I'm trying to do with all the things that we've talked about. And so originally the bootstrapping is the best in the sense that it gives you a lot of freedom, and you can take you can learn, you can pivot, you can my idea initially was quite small too, but there are lots of constraints and lots of stressors in going down that route. So ultimately, as I've opened my mind and learned a lot more about fundraising and have met a lot of different investors and talked to a lot of different founders, I changed my approach to, I guess, like really looking for investors that understand that what I just said, which is like being, oh, I might maybe I want to clarify this. Like, it's about understanding that where I want to focus. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Is what I found is when trying to raise money, like different investors obviously expect different things. But one theme I have seen is that I need to really present, like really think about what are the best words to say and what's the right angle, what's the story, right? That's something that a lot of people have to go through, and I have learned to be better at that. But ultimately, my interest and focus in starting Redly is not to craft this beautiful story about the company and then raise as much money as possible. It's more about like I want to focus my time on building something. Um, and so I feel like out of the investors that I've spoken to, strategic investors tend to be. I could be, I haven't met everyone, but I could be wrong. But I feel like strategic investors are generally more aligned with that philosophy. That they're not looking for immediate, massive, gains, and then I can, yeah, I can maybe be um, a bit more thoughtful about how I approach building the team and the game. So that's ultimately where I landed.
Yeah. I'd love to dig a little bit more into that emotional journey, right? Like, and this is sort of goes to a lot of times I like to ask about like, how did you think it was going to go versus how did it go and how did you deal with that? And like, tell me about that journey. Um, but specifically in your answer, you sort of said like, oh, I set out to bootstrap and then that evolved into working with strategics. And, I agree with a lot of your conclusions about like, if you're not trying to build the next unicorn or the payout in 5 to 7 years with 100 time return kind of thing, right? VC doesn't make a ton of sense. But strategics, sort of operate a little bit like VCs as far as putting money in, but their goals are almost more publisher like in a lot of ways, right? And so they are about what are you going to build? Like you can take your time to do it. That's what we're interested in, is those outcomes. But emotionally, going from I'm going to bootstrap, let's go, I'm going to do it all myself, to no, I am now working and talking with investors and sort of putting yourself back into that headspace. How was that journey for you? Like how did that sort of come about? How are you feeling about it, right? And yeah, just a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question because there were definitely emotions. It's I think it's more about just starting off feeling like completely unfettered, right? Just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, but then I think oh yeah, you brought up a lot of stuff. So let me see. I guess like working with strategics, I guess the first thing I learned is just that okay, it's actually not bad at all. In fact, like finding the right partner can make a huge difference. Like the strategic investor that has backed us now, I think is wonderful, right? Like um, there's a lot of freedom and autonomy, so it's been great. But I think getting to that point, like just going through the decision making and trying to figure out, like, is this the right thing for me? Is this the right thing for us? Was emotional because it basically meant that I still like, even if I'm working with an investor that says, "Hey, you've got, take the time you need, and we know that you'll do something. We trust you." Like, I still feel really accountable, right? Like, I still feel like as long as I am being funded, like that there are investors, I feel like my approach will need to change a bit in terms of the scale of the product that we build, or even like, the branding of the company itself, or like the messaging. I just have to think a bit more about that. So emotionally, I felt a bit more unsure, uncomfortable. And also, as a result of being backed, it's a good thing in like a lot of ways. Like, you get more visibility, people, reach out to you, connect with you more. And that puts me in this uncomfortable position again, where I'm like, I just want to put my head down and build stuff. But I can't just shut everyone off, right? Like, that wouldn't be good for me, and it wouldn't be good for my investors. So I have to allocate more emotional and mental energy into that. And to be honest with you, I do love talking to people. I do love getting to know people. I'm not the most extroverted person, but I really do enjoy that. So it's not like it was a bad thing, but emotionally for me, it just felt like, oh, like I really just wanted to focus on one thing. And now, because I have, support, which I'm very appreciative of, I actually do need to play different roles in as a founder. I can't just be this like cool person with headphones on and like make make something great in like 5, 6, 10 years. Like, I really do have to hold myself a lot more accountable to what happens in the next quarter, in the next year, and so on.
Yeah. What's been the hardest part of that fundraising journey for you?
I think actually, probably figuring out the story, like I was mentioning. It's about communication. So that's the hardest thing for me, I would say, like communicating to an audience I've never communicated with much before. And and that means maybe like, I'm a very honest person, and I prefer to just be honest about things. But what I found is, like, it's not that, in this fundraising journey, that people don't want honesty, but that I need to be a lot more focused in my messaging. Like, I need to very clearly and concisely describe what is my vision, what am I trying to do, what's Redly, and why we're good. And I just haven't been very comfortable selling myself, like saying like, oh yeah, you should definitely invest in us because I'm awesome. Like, but that almost feels like I have to learn how to say those things and advocate for myself. And that part about being a solo founder also kicks in right here, right? It's not only the communication, but also communicating alone, representing this company, um, and learning how to do that, and also looking credible as much as possible. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me.
So, again, sort of zooming in back to your personal journey as you've been going, and sort of how you as an individual are, you know, thriving mostly, but occasionally struggling on this journey. What do you feel like your biggest struggle has been as a founder, right? Like as an individual founder on this journey, and how have you been approaching dealing with that struggle?
Yeah, I think the like tying a little back to what we talked about, the well, I mentioned that initially I didn't feel so lonely, but after a while, it wasn't about loneliness, but the struggle that I encountered was more, well, two things. One is that I was really struggling with wanting more feedback and validation for decisions that impact the company that I had to make. And how I went about trying to resolve that was to look for mentors and people that have done it before. And I'm still kind of open, and in some ways searching for people who might be willing to take me under their wing, and because they've done it, they've been successful, and just be able to be a sounding board for me to talk through things like, even like recruiting, brand, how to communicate externally, hiring decisions, product direction stuff. Like, all of these things are for me, like right now, areas that I drive, but I would love to like get more input so that I can be more confident that I'm reaching the best conclusion. So far, it's been good, and I think I'll continue to look for support there. And the other part is emotionally. Like, I think loneliness is not the right word, but just it's a very emotional journey. Like, going, and last year, but my first year doing this, has been probably the hardest. I feel okay now, but maybe another one is coming where it's gonna be really tough. But the starting, like getting everything started in that first 6 months was really tough. And I think during that time was when I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have, people that have can relate to what you're going through and can just at least like not tell you that you're not crazy, but at least tell you that, it's totally normal to be feeling these things. And so I think to be honest with you, I the emotional aspect caught me off guard maybe more than anything else. Because you would think, like, even for people listening to our podcast who want to do this, you're thinking, and I have been there myself, right? I'm like, okay, I got it. Like, I know all the advice, all the wisdom from everyone. I'm ready. I know what to expect. But it's not the same when you're going through it and you actually feel those things. So that
Hmm.
actually surprised me. And you know having to seek out, coaches or support, who can like help me with that is something I didn't really account for, but is something that I'm definitely leaning on now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason why I include this section of questions in the podcast exactly to that point, right? Like there's so much advice out there that you read or watch or listen to that you're like, oh, I got this. And then the lived in experience definitely hits you hard. And a lot of those resources don't necessarily talk about that side of it of like, how do you support yourself, whether you're a solo founder or you have co-founders or whatever, right? Like being a founder is a very different kind of job than any other job that folks have had. And so, you have to rebuild all these new support structures for this very new kind of job.
Exactly.
Speaking of, what do you sort of, you've mentioned that you've had to go on this journey and you've built up stuff and you've talked to various things and you are assembling these support structures for yourself. What are your primary support structures for yourself as a founder, right? Like, what have you had to build around yourself, whether it's people or activities or whatever else, to really help yourself through this journey?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think one of the my I guess the biggest priority for me was to find a couple of people, even if they are employees that I felt I could trust. And so I would say my team now, we're small, but I trust every single one of them, and I feel like I can lean on them for discussing ideas, and it's definitely a lot better now. And I think anyone new that I bring on, I would also be looking to empower them to like be that support for me in terms of validating ideas, feedback, and so on. And then on top of that, I've also, like I mentioned, reached out to a couple of coaches and figures in the industry. I've done like cold outreach, even like just on LinkedIn and stuff, for people like that I saw. Oh, they have founded this company, they've exited, they've done this before, just to try and connect with other people that have gone through this. So that's still something that's happening. So I would say that's on the people side. And I have a great coach as well now who's helping me just talk through things as well. And I actually, I could say that, like, I I've never had coaches before. Like, I've had coaches in a corporate way, but like now when I have a session with them, it's like it's so relaxing, and it's the greatest feeling in the world, because suddenly I'm like, oh, someone is going to care about me for an hour, and I could just get to talk. And yeah, so I think now, like, now that I have that and I'm not just stuck in my head all the time, that is really nice. And other than people, I think the AI stuff, like just using tools to build frameworks for myself. So you're probably really familiar with this, but just setting up systems with the tools to automate as much as possible, so that certain things that I maybe dislike doing is less overwhelming. And then also, because I work remote, like I said, just making sure I get outside. I go out for lunch, take a walk, and not get stuck. I have spent up to a week in my home, like not leave sometimes, like so that's something I learned from, and I there's a correlation between that and like how depressed I feel at some point. So I think just like really, so actually I batch meetings with people, like I have coffee with people, and I would be like, okay, at least one day a week I need to have coffee with people. So let me just like batch it together in this day, so I'm like forced to go out, walk around and stuff. Yeah, and nutrition and health is really important. So not falling into that stereotype of just like making something and eating chips and candy all the time, like just because it's close by. Like really taking care of your body, I think will help a lot. You know, when you're dealing with being a founder and going on this really challenging journey.
Is there any sort of place in that fabric of support where you're like, man, I kind of have a gap here that I wish I had more support, and I need to think about building that in the future?
Hmm. Yeah, I need to think about that. I feel like there are gaps. There are lots of gaps, but maybe maybe any gap that I can think of is it comes down to more of a technical thing, right? Like technical execution eh, uh, I, more than the things that I have described. I still want to find more mentors that have done this before. And you know what? Right, there is one gap, but it is also a bit around execution, which is just because I'm based in Europe and Finland and really far away from innovation hubs, I suppose. Like Finland is quite innovative too, but
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like for all my excitement about like really wanting to build games in a different way and really embracing new tools, I still feel like I can be more educated around that and have like just be faster or more on top of what's happening. And because I have been doing so much right now getting the company started, that I haven't really allocated enough time to deep dive um into all the new tools coming out, right? So I think just like that's a bit of a gap for me as part of in aligning what I'm doing with my values and motivations of starting Redly, that I feel like I really want to look more into and fill. It's not the top priority right now because we're so focused on building our first game, but I don't want to lose sight of that because the whole point is to actually try to do things in a way that is like really leveraging what's out there right now. So I guess that's one.
When you think about sort of the next 6 to 12 months, right? Like looking at the horizon, both for yourself on this individual journey of founding, but obviously that's intrinsically tied to Redley and the company. Um, what are you thinking a lot about, right? Like not quite a keep you up at night sort of thing as far as a negative connotation, but like from a strategic perspective of like I need to be thinking about these things for what's to come over the next 6 to 12 months. What's occupying your brain?
Right. Well, the biggest question and what keeps me up at night is, are we making the right game? So like it's I worry about that a lot, not because I'm not confident, but because you never really know, right? And so that and bringing the right people together, like those are the most important aspects. You can't have one without the other, but I think if I had to choose just one, then yeah, like are we making something that people will like? I really want to find out as soon as possible, but then it takes time to get there as well. So I think that's the biggest focus for us and the biggest thing on my mind all the time.
And then I always like to close out the main section of the interview with an entirely unfair question, which
Uh-oh.
is which is given the experience thus far,
Hmm.
would you found another company?
Yes. Yes. 100%. I think I think founding a company is in some ways a privilege. Like it's definitely one I don't take for granted. So, but if I am privileged enough to be in a position where I could start another company in the future, I would definitely do it because despite the challenges and the struggles, it's just so rewarding, the learning and the growth. I would say like I wouldn't recommend anyone do it because they're looking for a specific outcome. Like that's how I see it. Like I would do it again because so far this journey already has been so rewarding that of course I want to strive for the best outcome, but it's not about the outcome. It's about the ambition. It's about like really believing in something, having conviction and learning, like doing whatever it takes and learning as much as possible to get to it. And if I were to be in a position where I could take all the things I've learned just now, like with Redley, and really like do it better the next time, I would love to do that. Of course, I hope Redley sticks around
Hmm.
and will
Hmm.
keep me occupied and busy for a long time. But yeah, like I would definitely do this again a few more times.
As a question, do you think that you would solo found again?
I really don't know. I actually would love to. Actually, there's a few points where I would love to actually know what you think, but this is one of the questions where I would be curious about to get your take on it. I don't know. Like there are some aspects I really love about solo founding, like the speed and the clarity. But maybe for my second one, like if there are people I trust that is a good fit, then I would like to experience that because I haven't. But I wouldn't say I would do it just because I dislike my current experience.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was like that for you.
Yeah, I think after my first go round in solo founding, I sort of said I will never ever do that again.
Ah, okay.
And I've definitely said that to folks of like, don't ever solo found, like that's a bad idea. And I think that you know it is a much harder journey, and you have to be a very particular kind of person to be able to survive that. And it will make a lot of things harder. Not like to your point, like not even on the emotional side, just on the like when you have two people, you have double the network, you have double the pedigree, you have double the all these things, right? But there have definitely been moments during this founding journey where, very very transiently, but I've had the moments where I'm like, God, I just wish I was a solo founder. Like I could just move faster. I could just make this call. I could just do this thing, right? And I don't think those are particularly healthy impulses either. But I think it does. I'm starting to appreciate both sides more with this second journey. Um, so I don't think I'm as hard never solo found again as I was before. But I am also a very collaborative person, and I think it would be it's particularly hard for me to do the solo founding journey. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. And actually to what you said, I think it would be really good for me to like collaborate with co-founders on this journey again. Like it's like, reset game and do another run with a party kind of thing. I think maybe the particular appeal for me now is maybe I've spent a lot of time as a producer. Maybe you kind of get this too in the past where you're kind of like already collaborating a lot. And for me coming into this, maybe one of the reasons I didn't get too scared is okay, I finally get to just do something.
yep,
So that there's a big part of that. But after this is out of my system, I think there's a lot to be learned also on like how do you make decisions together with other people that in this new context, like this context that's not a company or work, like you are co-owners of an initiative. So yeah, so I think that's really interesting. And I really appreciate your perspective on that as well.
yeah, for sure. So, how I like to close out the podcast is what I call the introspection lightning round. But where these really came from, actually, were these are a set of questions that I would give to potential co-founders ahead of our first like coffee meeting or whatever, to just sort of lay a framework, and we would both bring our answers, go through them, and it would just
Oh.
help us start the conversation to understand how we align, where we don't. Would those be net positive, or we all share the same weaknesses? That might be bad, kind of idea. They do read a little bit like terrible interview questions, but they were good for forming that basis. And so we'll just go through them really quick to get your sort of your lightning round answers to them. And the first question is, what is your superpower?
I think, yeah, I think maybe if I were to talk about myself and not from other people's perspective, it would be my ability to learn really quickly. Like I think I have always in my whole career put myself in positions that are uncomfortable. Like if I don't know something, I just go charging towards it. Like and have to adapt and learn a new set of skills, new context. So I think I'm really comfortable um, with just dropping into a situation, understanding what I need to do, and then just think a bit about it a bit, and then come up with a plan, and then like take action. So I think I've been able to do that quite quickly in various different contexts, career wise. So I think that might be my superpower.
Outside of your superpower, what are your biggest strengths?
Hmm. I think that I can. I mean, I guess I have a lot of patience. Maybe patience with not with myself. I get angry a lot with myself, but with other people, I just really enjoy getting to know people, like really trying to understand people. And because of that, I think one of my strengths is just like connecting with people, not on a superficial level, but if we so choose to, like in a more meaningful um, way, that we can have really interesting conversations and learn a lot from each other. So I think there's that. And then also, I think I'm able to um, go very strategic and high level and be able to operate in on at that level, and then go all the way down to very low level task. I know for some people that's difficult and it's not easy for me, but like yeah, I can be thinking about strategy and like direction of our product or company, and seeing the big picture, and then I could be like in the Unreal editor placing actors and building out a level and like entering numbers on a spreadsheet, and that's been really helpful as a founder, as you can imagine.
The flip side of that is, what are your big weaknesses?
Yeah, so this one is pretty personal. I think it's that something I've learned upon reflection in this founding journey, but also in my past, is when making decisions, especially in a group, like with a team, or with other people, I think my first instinct is to default to trying to find something that makes everyone happy. And it's not about people pleasing, it's about like this genuine belief that if we just talk enough, or if I just try hard enough or think hard enough, that I could come up with some perfect design solution or answer to a problem that everyone in this group will be happy with. And I think that's a weakness because I have learned through different cases where it's not optimizing for the right goals, right? Like and this is even more clear to me as a founder, because now I've got skin in the game and every decision really matters. And if I make decision based on how everyone is feeling or even how I'm feeling, we could be optimizing for the wrong things, and that's never been so clear to me on this journey as it is now. So I can clearly say, like, I think, wow, it's nice, that I care about people. It's also a weakness that I have.
Yeah, yeah, it can be an Achilles heel in certain situations.
Yeah.
What behaviors come out when you're under intense stress? Like, what are your stress reaction behaviors?
Oh my gosh. I cry. I guess. I get angry, but I try not to do it in front of people. I guess maybe the best way to put it is I usually need space, so I would seek out space to be alone. I can get really upset when I'm in a space where I know like no one will have to observe me being super upset. And then I take a long walk, but I think what's interesting is I noticed that when I get really stressed out, I would go through what I just said, and then at some point I would get so sick of that state that I would just work on something. Like I need to take action. And sometimes that can be hard, because if what's stressing me out doesn't have a solution, I'm still trying to I'm still trying to take action to fix it somehow. So yeah, that's my kind of loop.
Yeah, and the challenge, I think, especially in a lot of aspects of a founding journey, is exactly that last point. Is like, what is stressing you out is ambiguous and not something you can just like go heads down and solve. It's just floating out there amorphously, and you just kind of are stressed about it, right?
Yeah.
On the sort of the complement to this is like, what are the things that need to happen for you professionally on a regular basis that keep you from getting too overwhelmed or too stressed, right? Like I kind of call these your upkeep needs, the things that just need to happen on a regular basis that keep you in the zone professionally.
Mm. You know what? I think for me, that's inspiration. Like you mentioned professionally, so like we won't talk about nutrition again, but but I think for me, it's like really making space. So inspiration from learning and inspiration from like consuming other sources of like what I'm trying to make. So the first is like really engaging in news and article and what's going on in the world and what's going on in the AI space in the industry. Um, s- and it like really helps me put things into perspective and sometimes really helps me like reset and get back onto what I'm doing. But then the more exciting thing, the upkeep thing is just reminding myself to go and like get an art book or watch a movie, play a game, read books, and just be in a creative zone. Be in a zone where I'm like really engaging with other people's creativity, other people's worlds, and being really inspired and excited about what I'm doing because it serves as a fuel to recharge me. And a good side of like I guess a good thing about that is that if I'm not doing that, I'm basically just drawing upon what I have in my head that could be really stale, right? So I need to always like replenish that energy as much as possible to help me professionally like find the right way to do something or just be inspired and think of fresh ideas on what to make.
That concludes our set of questions. I want to thank you so much for being on the show with us. If folks heard something here that they're really interested in, they want to follow up, they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Definitely welcome to connect with me over LinkedIn. I think you can search for me using my name,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a website as well. And I think that's that's all we have. So LinkedIn is probably the best way. And then of course there's like a contact email on the website. I'll definitely check emails as well. I don't have a like an Instagram or other socials yet, but I am pretty active on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much for being on and answering all the questions.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun, and yeah, really appreciate being here.
Thanks for listening to the entire episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends or anyone you think could benefit from it, and leave us a positive rating or subscribe. This episode was edited by Christopher Delano, music by Jake Hall, who's available for composer work in games. And if you're interested in learning more about the Game Founders support community, go to gamefounders.org or email me at carl@gamefounders.org. Thanks so much.